What TV series has the best pilot episode? Battlestar Galactica, but not the miniseries. The first episode 33 was almost perfect. That was the single most physically and emotionally exhausting episode of any TV series I've ever watched. People don't believe me when I tell them that. Westworld Season 1 Episode 1, the original, is pretty amazing. Arrested Development, illusions, Michael. Tricks are something hookers do for money. The SEC has votes now. Star Trek Deep Space Nine's pilot episode was top-tier Star Trek, and one of the few street pilots to nail the show's atmosphere and themes right away. Futurama. I remember watching it over 20 years ago when it first came out and instantly being hooked on it. Still holds up well compared to the rest of the series, which is amazing. First episode and the last episode and all of them in between. Yes, though. Meanwhile was the finale the series deserved. I'm so glad it got such a great ending the second time around. I thought Burn Notice had a great pilot, just wish they had kept the same level of humor they started with throughout the rest of the series. Same. Though it was gonna be a comedy drama, not a drama. Loved that show from beginning to end, but it did seem to suffer from an identity crisis for a while. Pushing Daisies. Everything felt surreal. Man, I miss that show. Was so quirky and fun. Sad it didn't survive very long. The Walking Dead had a fantastic pilot episode that felt like its own individual story. It got me hooked immediately. It's unfortunate the show went downhill. The pilot for The Walking Dead truly is a masterpiece. As you said, it's quite a shame the show went downhill. This last couple seasons with the Whisperers thing really brought some fresh air into it, but it's hard for me to care about 90% of the characters in the show, apart from Carol, Daryl, Negan and Judith. They should have kept either Carl or Henry around as far as I am concerned. I'd go as far as to say that the entirety of Season 1 was up there with a peak of what TV has to offer. Those first 6 episodes were the easiest one-day binge of my life. I was hooked, and while seasons 2 to 4 were decent, it was slowly but surely going downhill. I finally gave up a few episodes into Season 5. The show just stopped feeling fresh and most episodes felt like filler and just dragged on. The whole of Season 1 is a masterpiece. Lost. $14 million pilot. They bought a plane, cut it up and transported it to the beach in Hawaii. Pretty sure the guy in charge of greenlighting pilots at the network was fired for it. Imagine if the show hadn't been a success. The rumor is he was on his way out anyway, so he approved the budget as ********* to NBC. **ABC. A Good Place got right into the action, no 30 minutes of boring introduction. It has my respect, and it's a forking good show. I'd go on to say it also has one of the best finales ever as well. It really wrapped everything up in a sad but satisfying way. It's the rare show that was high quality all the way through. While I'm sad it's over, I'm glad it ended on its terms with one of the best finales there is. I think it ended really well, but the middle of Season 4 felt like it was going nowhere. They could have cut some stuff out. I completely agree with you on this. The funny thing is I would hold almost no other sitcom to that standard. Mid-Season 4 is high quality, but not the perfection of the rest of the series, so it just cannot live up to its own standard. BBC's Sherlock had a great first episode. Graphics on screen are commonplace now, but that was pretty cool to me at the time. Sherlock popularized that way of showing text messages. Now everyone does it, very efficient and clean. I remember reading that they got the idea from Korean cinema, so it was just popularizing it. I'm glad they did, though, because watching some older shows can be a little painful with how they showed text messages. Alias. Hands down the most bonkers thing ever. Emo. A young woman working for the CIA tells her fiancé he gets killed. She discovers she's not working for the CIA, goes on a mission solo to prove her loyalty to the fake CIA before they kill her. Immediately heads to the real CIA to become a double agent. Once vetted, she gets told she's in the real CIA as a double agent by her father, who is also a double agent for the CIA and involved in the attempted hit on her. In the first 60 minutes. Bonkers. That show was fantastic until it got bogged down into the Rambaldi business. It felt like it had no idea where it was going to go, which may be true since it was a J.J. Abrams show if I recall correctly. This is why I fundamentally don't trust mysteries and shows with an indefinite episode count. Runners constantly introduce what is supposed to be an epic mystery with mythological-like background, and it never occurs to them they should only start if they have an endgame. The Sopranos. Honestly, I was just really intrigued by this tough mafioso guy and his obsession with those ducks. Living in NYC, it was a bit too realistic sometimes. Gravity Falls. Good jokes, interesting setup, good hook for the overarching mystery, and a really good monster. Does Chernobyl count? The first 9 minutes hooked me. It was so good and felt surreal. Heroes had me hooked. Heroes had one of the best first seasons ever, and then writers' strike happened and destroyed the show's chances of being good. Seriously, that strike killed what could have been one of the best shows of all time. Each season got worse than the last. New Girl told you exactly what the series would be. The Shield came looking for this one. First episode sets a chain of events in motion that lasts the whole series. Supernatural has one of the most well-crafted pilots I've ever seen. By the end of the first hour, we know who the brothers are. We know what they do, and why. We know how they feel about each other, and why, and how they each feel about their dad. We know what sort of man their dad is and why he does what he does, and he's not even in the episode. We get an overview of their entire world. And it does it all without resorting to any of the typical tropes we see in pilots. No voiceovers. No new guy, girl on the team who asks questions on our behalf and who gets things explained to, so the audience can be filled in on things patronizingly. The only flashback is entirely relevant, and it has an amazing payoff at the end. Asterisk, Dad went on a hunting trip and hasn't been back in a while. First episode of Dexter gets you right from the start, kinda like God. The Boys. Perfection. Yeah, I was into it. Then a train happened and I said out loud, oh, it's gonna be that kind of show up, and immediately got more comfortable. Have to say Supernatural. I was hooked straight away. God, I miss that show. When it was good. It really should have ended at season 5. I mean, I never would have heard about it, but still. I loved the pilot. It's changed so much. Season 1, Sam and Dean wouldn't recognize their season 15 selves. Shame we have to wait for the fall to put this show out of its misery. Now just wait for when Supernatural itself comes back from the dead. SpongeBob, of course. I've been watching the first 100 episodes, and it's interesting seeing the small differences between the early episodes and what comes later. In Plankton's first episode, he was a speck that you needed a magnifying glass to see, whereas in later episodes, he's much larger. His earlier plots also focus on trying to steal a Krabby Patty, but after a few attempts, the focus shifts to trying to steal the recipe instead. SpongeBob's strength also varies between episodes. The pilot shows that he struggles to lift 2 stuffed animals, and other early episodes play on this. It's exaggerated nearly as much after the first season. I just finished episode 29 last night. I would like to subscribe to your podcast. Prison Break. Season 1 of KB is my favorite TV to date. Archer, but the Velociraptor version. NLT, heavy Russian accent, and GT, Sterling Archer. It's hard to beat the Twin Peaks pilot, especially given how homogeneous TV was at the time. Honorable mentions to Lost, The Good Place, and Game of Thrones. Twin Peaks and Lost are always my answer to this question. I've yet to see a pilot hook me the way those do. Granted, those pilots were produced as if they were films, but still. Both absolutely amazing. The Good Place. I mean, giant flying shrimps to the tune of the most ungrammatical song ever written? What more do you want from a pilot? Barry. 6 Feet Under. One of the best final episodes too. I bawled my eyes out, what a way to go. I loved the opening too. Always loved Sorkin's writing. The West Wing was a great show also. Couldn't take my eyes off the screen when Jeff started his rant on stage. It was brilliant and he spoke it perfectly. Fringe. I love Fringe, but I have to always remember not to be eating when watching the pilot. You, dead to me, How to Get Away with Murder. Out of context, this would be a very alarming comment. The Wire. McNulty, let me understand. Every Friday night, you and your boys are shooting beef asterisk, right? And every Friday night, your pal Snot Boogie, he'd wait till there's cash on the ground and he'd grab it and run away. You let him do that? kid, we'd catch him and beat his beat, but ain't nobody ever go past that. McNulty, I've gotta ask you, if every time Snot Boogie would grab the money and run away, why'd you